Isabella woke up that morning with sunlight filtering gently through the curtains of her downtown apartment. The smell of fresh coffee already filled the air, courtesy of Raphael, who always woke up before her. It was a routine they both cherished, a small ritual that connected them before the outside world demanded their attention. In the kitchen, Raphael was turned away from her, focused on preparing breakfast. He was a methodical man, something Isabella admired. Hearing her footsteps, he turned, offering her a warm smile that lit up his face. "Good morning, Sleeping Beauty," he teased, placing a cup of coffee next to a plate of fruit and toast. "Good morning," Isabella replied, returning the smile. She sat at the table, feeling grateful for that moment of tranquility. With the wedding just a few months away, Isabella's life was a whirlwind of preparations. Additionally, her most ambitious architectural project to date was about to be unveiled to the public. It was an innovative cultural complex that promised to revitalize a forgotten part of the city. The project was her passion, something she had worked tirelessly on. After coffee, Isabella prepared for the busy day ahead. As she dressed, she thought of Mariana, her best friend and confidant. Mariana was always by her side, helping with wedding preparations and offering valuable advice. Their friendship was an anchor amidst the chaos. At the office, Isabella's team was in full swing. Everyone was focused on the final details before the project's presentation. Isabella walked through the space, offering words of encouragement and checking on progress. She was a respected leader, admired for her vision and dedication. Later that same day, Isabella met Mariana for lunch. Seated in a cozy restaurant, the two friends discussed wedding plans and project updates. Mariana was excited, as always, and her energy was contagious. "You're about to conquer the world, Isa," Mariana said, raising her glass in a toast. "To the future." "To the future," Isabella agreed, feeling optimistic and hopeful. The day passed quickly, and by the end of the afternoon, Isabella returned home, exhausted but satisfied. Raphael awaited her with a simple yet delicious dinner. They shared stories and laughter about their days. It was a moment Isabella cherished, a welcome pause amidst the hustle and bustle. After dinner, they decided to take a brief walk around the neighborhood, something they often did to relax and talk about various topics, from future plans to small memories of the past. The night was pleasant, and Isabella felt at peace, as if everything was exactly where it should be. As they got ready for bed, Isabella felt a wave of gratitude. Her life was at a high point, and she couldn't have been happier. With Raphael by her side and Mariana as her loyal friend, Isabella felt that nothing could go wrong. Thus, she fell asleep, unaware that the perfect world she had built was about to be shaken by forces beyond her control. The next morning, Isabella woke up with a slight feeling of unease. She couldn't quite pinpoint why, but there was a persistent sense that something was out of place. She tried to ignore the feeling as she prepared for another day full of commitments. At the office, the team was in full swing, but Isabella noticed her mind wandering more than usual. Between meetings and project reviews, flashes of her personal life invaded her thoughts. Small details that had previously gone unnoticed now seemed to demand her attention. Like the night before, when Raphael received a message and quickly pocketed his phone, or the way Mariana had avoided her gaze during lunch. These thoughts were interrupted by a call from Raphael. He sounded excited, inviting her to a special dinner that night. "I have a surprise for you," he said, with a mysterious tone that Isabella always found charming. She accepted the invitation, trying to dispel the doubts that were beginning to form in her mind. Throughout the day, Isabella tried to focus on work. She met with her team to discuss final adjustments to the project, but her mind continued to drift. Something about the way Raphael and Mariana had been acting recently bothered her. She decided she needed to talk to Mariana, perhaps just to ease her mind. After work, Isabella met Mariana at a cafe near the office. The conversation started light, with Mariana talking about wedding preparations and work updates. However, Isabella couldn't avoid bringing up what was really on her mind. "Have you noticed Raphael acting strange lately?" Isabella asked, trying to sound casual. Mariana hesitated for a moment before replying, "Maybe he's just nervous about the wedding. It's a big step after all." Mariana's response didn't completely satisfy her, But Isabella decided not to press the issue. Maybe it was just her imagination, exacerbated by the stress of wedding preparations and the project. That night, Isabella dressed up for dinner with Raphael. She chose a dress he loved, trying to convince herself she was just being paranoid. When she arrived at the restaurant, Raphael was already there, waiting for her with a smile that seemed to light up the room. Dinner began pleasantly, with Raphael sharing funny stories about his day at work. However, Isabella couldn't help but notice he was more attentive to his phone than usual. The night wore on, and Isabella tried to enjoy the moment, but the feeling of unease persisted. After dessert, Raphael finally revealed the surprise: a weekend getaway to a mountain lodge, a romantic retreat for them to relax before the wedding. Isabella was touched by the gesture, and for a moment, her worries dissipated. Perhaps everything was truly fine, and she was just overreacting. Back at the apartment, as they prepared for bed, Isabella looked at Raphael, trying to find some hidden truth in his eyes. He seemed genuinely happy, and that comforted her. She decided she needed to stop doubting and trust Raphael and Mariana more. However, as she drifted off to sleep, Isabella couldn't help but think about how Mariana had hesitated before answering her question. The weekend in the mountains was exactly what Isabella needed. The fresh breeze and the relaxing sound of the trees helped calm her anxieties. Raphael was attentive and caring, and Isabella felt closer to him than she had in months. However, upon returning to the city, the doubts she had tried to leave behind began to resurface. On Monday, as she prepared for work, Isabella noticed Raphael's phone vibrating incessantly on the kitchen table. He was in the shower, and Isabella hesitated for a moment before picking up the device. It wasn't like her to snoop, but curiosity got the better of her. Unlocking the phone, Isabella saw a series of messages from Mariana. Her heart raced as she read them. The messages were vague, but there was something about the way the words were written that made her uncomfortable. Phrases like, "We need to talk," and "I can't continue like this," jumped off the screen, leaving her tense. Isabella put the phone back in its place and tried to act normally. When Raphael emerged from the shower, she smiled, but her mind was racing. On the way to the office, her head spun with possibilities. She needed to talk to Mariana, but how to approach the subject without sounding accusatory? At work, Isabella tried to concentrate, but the words from the messages echoed in her mind. During lunch, she decided to call Mariana, inviting her for coffee after work. Mariana accepted, though her voice sounded hesitant. The meeting at the cafe was tense. Isabella tried to start the conversation casually, but the anxiety was palpable. Finally, she asked directly, "Mariana, is there something you want to tell me about Raphael?" Mariana was silent for a moment, looking at her coffee cup as if seeking answers there. Then, she sighed deeply. "Isa, I don't know how to say this." Isabella's heart sank. She didn't want to hear what was coming, but she knew she needed to. "Please, just say it." Mariana looked into Isabella's eyes, tears beginning to form. "Raphael and we got too close. It wasn't supposed to happen, but it did." Isabella felt as if the ground had been pulled out from under her feet. Her vision blurred, and the sound around her faded away. Mariana's words echoed in her mind, each syllable a knife stabbing her heart. "Why?" was all she could manage to ask, her voice sounding distant and fragile. "I don't know," Mariana replied, tears streaming down her face. "It was a mistake. I'm so sorry, Isa. I didn't want to hurt you." Isabella stood up abruptly, the chair scraping the floor with a sharp sound. She needed to get out of there, needed air. Without looking back, she left the cafe, leaving Mariana amidst tears and regret. Back in the safety of her apartment, Isabella collapsed. The tears came in a torrent as she tried to process the double betrayal she had just discovered. Raphael, the man she loved, and Mariana, her closest friend, had broken her trust irreparably. As the night wore on, Isabella knew she needed to confront Raphael, but the words seemed to escape her. She felt lost, floating in a sea of conflicting emotions. However, one thing was certain: her life would never be the same. The next morning, Isabella woke up with swollen eyes and a heavy mind. The pain was still raw, and the idea of facing Raphael seemed unbearable. However, she knew she needed to confront him, needed to hear his side, even if it hurt her more. When Raphael came home from work, Isabella was waiting for him in the living room, the phone in her hand. He entered, smiling, but the smile disappeared when he saw her expression. "Isa, what's wrong?" She took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "I had a visit from Mariana yesterday." Raphael paled, and Isabella saw the truth in his eyes before he even spoke. "Isa, I can explain." "I don't know if I want to hear your explanations, Raphael," she interrupted, her voice trembling but firm. "I just want to know why." Raphael hesitated, searching for the right words. We got too close. It was a mistake, Isa. I'm so sorry." Isabella shook her head, tears streaming down. "You destroyed everything, Raphael. Everything we built together." He tried to approach, but she stepped back. "I don't know if I can forgive this. I don't know if I want to." The pain in Raphael's eyes was evident, but Isabella couldn't give in. Not now. "I need time," she finally said. "To think. To understand how to move forward." With that, she walked away, leaving Raphael alone in the room. The decision on how to proceed was far from clear, but Isabella knew she needed space to find her own answers. After the devastating revelation, Isabella felt like an empty shell, floating in a sea of uncertainties. The days that followed were filled with a fog of pain and confusion. The betrayal by Raphael and Mariana echoed in her mind, making it difficult to focus on anything else. She distanced herself from work, unable to face the team or pretend everything was normal. Isabella spent hours walking around the city, trying to clear her mind. The streets she once knew so well now seemed strange and distant. She found herself watching couples walking hand in hand, wondering if any of them were also living a lie. Trust, which once came naturally, now seemed a distant and unattainable concept. At home, the silence was deafening. Raphael's presence, even when he wasn't there, permeated every corner of the apartment. Isabella tried to remove traces of him, storing photos and memories in a box she pushed to the back of the closet. However, the pain persisted, a constant shadow that couldn't be simply hidden away. One night, unable to sleep, Isabella decided to write. She sat at the kitchen table with a notebook and pen, pouring her thoughts and feelings onto the pages. Writing had always been an escape for her, a way to process what was beyond spoken words. The words flowed, revealing layers of anger, sadness, and a deep sense of loss. "How could you do this to me?" she wrote, addressing Raphael and Mariana. "I trusted you more than anyone else. Now, all I feel is emptiness." The pages filled quickly, each line a necessary catharsis. Upon finishing, Isabella felt a slightly lighter weight in her chest. It wasn't a solution, but it was a start. She realized she needed to find a way to move forward, to rebuild her life without the people who had betrayed her. Determined to reconnect with the world, Isabella began accepting invitations from friends she had neglected. They were a foundation, offering support without judgment. One night, during a dinner with a group of old college friends, Isabella found herself laughing at a silly joke. It was a small but significant moment, a glimpse that happiness was still possible. Despite attempts to move on, Isabella knew she needed to face Raphael again. There were unresolved issues, unspoken words that needed to be expressed. She arranged to meet him in a nearby park, a neutral space where they could talk without the shadows of the immediate past. Raphael arrived punctually, looking tired and remorseful. Isabella observed him for a moment, trying to reconcile the man she loved with what he had done. "Thank you for coming," she began, her voice firm but gentle. "Isa, I'm sorry," Raphael began, but Isabella raised her hand, interrupting him. "I'm not here to hear apologies," she said, looking directly into his eyes. "I need to understand. Why, Raphael? Why did you destroy what we had?" Raphael sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know, Isa. It was a mistake. I was confused and Mariana was there. I'm not trying to justify, just..." I don't know what to say. Isabella shook her head slowly. I wish you had talked to me, had been honest. We could have worked through it together. He nodded, tears in his eyes. I know, and I screwed everything up. If I could go back— But you can't, Isabella interrupted, her voice soft but firm. And now, I need to move on. Without you. The declaration hung between them, definitive and unalterable. Raphael nodded, accepting Isabella's decision. They said their goodbyes, knowing it would be the last farewell. As Isabella walked away, she felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. The future was uncertain, but she knew she had the strength to face it. It was time to start rewriting her own story, one line at a time. After the final confrontation with Raphael, Isabella immersed herself in a new phase of her life. Despite the persistent pain, she was determined to fully understand how everything had fallen apart. She needed answers, not to rekindle ties, but to find peace and move forward. Isabella began to re-examine the past months, revisiting memories and events that once seemed trivial. She realized there had been signs, small gestures, and glances between Raphael and Mariana that now made sense in light of the betrayal. This retrospective helped her accept that, although she couldn't change the past, she could learn from it. At work, Isabella threw herself into the architectural project that was about to be unveiled. The cultural complex was a long-held dream, and she used this passion as a form of distraction and healing. She spent hours reviewing every detail, ensuring everything was perfect for the presentation. Her team noticed the change, admiring her resilience, though few knew the true reason behind her renewed dedication. Isabella also began to discreetly investigate, seeking to understand more about Raphael and Mariana's involvement. She talked to mutual friends, probing carefully without raising suspicion. She discovered that some had already noticed the closeness between the two, but no one had imagined it would cross the boundaries of friendship. In one of these conversations, a friend mentioned seeing Raphael and Mariana together at a cafe. On a day Isabella remembered Raphael claiming to be working late. This small revelation was a blow, but also a confirmation that her intuition hadn't completely failed. Determined to confront Mariana once more, Isabella invited her for a meeting. Mariana accepted, though her voice on the phone was laden with tension. They met in a park, a place where they used to walk and dream together about the future. Thank you for coming, Isabella began, trying to stay calm. I need to understand, Mariana. How did this start? Mariana looked at the ground, visibly uncomfortable. Isa, I don't know exactly. It was a slip, something that should never have happened. But it did, Isabella insisted, her voice firm. And I need to know why. I deserve that. Mariana sighed, finally meeting Isabella's eyes. I guess I was feeling lonely, and Raphael, he was there, listening to me. I'm not trying to justify, it was a terrible mistake. Isabella absorbed the words, feeling a mix of anger and compassion. I trusted you, Mariana, more than anyone else. I know, Mariana replied, tears in her eyes. And I ruined everything. I'm sorry, Isa. Silence settled between them, heavy with everything that didn't need to be said. Isabella knew forgiveness wouldn't come easily, but she was tired of carrying the weight of resentment. I need to move on, Isabella finally said, and I hope you find a way to do the same. They said their goodbyes, aware that the friendship, once so important, would never be the same. Isabella left the park feeling lighter, as if part of the burden had finally been released. In the days that followed, Isabella found solace in her family and loyal friends. They surrounded her with love and support, helping her rebuild her confidence. She began to engage in activities she hadn't had time for before, rediscovering forgotten hobbies and interests. The architectural project was finally unveiled to the public, receiving acclaim and praise. Isabella was radiant during the presentation, feeling that this success was a reflection of her resilience and determination. It was a personal victory, proof that she could rise from the ashes. Over time, the wounds began to heal. Isabella learned to value herself and the importance of trusting her intuition. Although the path ahead was still uncertain, she was ready to face it, armed with the lessons of the past and the hope of a better future. As she walked home that night, Isabella felt a new sense of peace. She had faced the storm and come out stronger. She knew that, regardless of what the future held, she was ready to embrace it with an open heart. After the unveiling of the architectural project, Isabella began to feel a sense of relief. The professional success brought new vigor, but internally, she still struggled with the echoes of betrayal. The nights were the hardest. It was when her thoughts turned to what had happened, and doubts about herself arose. Isabella began attending therapy sessions, something she had hesitated to do but now saw as necessary. In the sessions, she explored her emotions, trying to understand how the trust she had placed in Raphael and Mariana had been so easily broken. The therapist, a woman with a soft and understanding voice, helped her see that the fault wasn't hers, but rather the choices of others. In the weeks that followed, Isabella dedicated herself to activities that made her happy. She rediscovered the joy of painting, a hobby she had abandoned. She spent hours in her small studio, the vibrant colors on the canvases reflecting her emotional state of transformation. Painting became a form of meditation, a safe space where she could express her feelings without fear of judgment. On one of these days, while mixing paints, Isabella received a message from an old college friend, Lucas. He was organizing a friends' reunion and wanted her to attend. Isabella hesitated, but decided it was time to reconnect with people who had always supported her. The reunion was held in a cozy bar, full of laughter and shared memories. Isabella found herself relaxing, the warmth of old friendships warming her heart. Lucas, always the joker of the group, made her laugh with stories from their college days. It was a welcome reminder that life went on, and there was joy to be found. During the night, Lucas approached her, offering a drink. "You look well, Isa. It's good to see you like this," he commented, his smile sincere. "Thank you, Lucas. It's been a difficult journey, but I'm getting there," Isabella replied, feeling grateful for his presence. As the night progressed, Isabella realized she was starting to feel like herself again. The shadows of betrayal were still there, but they were diminishing, replaced by new memories and experiences. She knew the healing process wasn't linear, but she was willing to move forward, one step at a time. Back home, Isabella reflected on how much she had changed in the past months. The pain was still present, but it no longer defined her. She had found strength in unexpected places and was determined to build a life that was truly hers. Isabella began making plans for the future, something that once seemed impossible. She thought about trips she always wanted to take, places she dreamed of visiting. The idea of exploring the world excited her, and she began researching destinations, creating a map of dreams she intended to fulfill. Therapy continued to be an important part of her journey. With each session, Isabella felt she was unraveling layers of herself she had previously been unaware of. She learned to forgive, not only others but also herself, for not seeing the signs, for trusting blindly. Over time, Isabella realized that true strength came from within. She didn't need external validation to know her worth. Isabella's life was gradually getting back on track. She continued to dedicate herself to her work and new hobbies, but part of her still longed for a definitive closure. It was then that she received an unexpected invitation to a company dinner, where Raphael would also be present. Isabella hesitated, but decided it was time to face her demons head-on. On the night of the dinner, Isabella chose a dress that made her feel confident and powerful. Looking in the mirror, she reminded herself that strength came from within. With her head held high, she left the house, determined not to let Raphael's presence affect her night. The event was in full swing when Isabella arrived. The hall was elegantly decorated, and laughter and conversation filled the air. She was warmly greeted by colleagues she hadn't seen in a while, and soon found herself engaged in lively conversations. As she circulated the room, Isabella spotted Raphael across the hall. He was talking with a group of people, but their eyes met for a brief moment. Isabella held his gaze, not allowing him to see any hesitation. Later, while at the buffet, Raphael approached her. "Isabella, can I talk to you for a moment?" he asked, his voice cautious. She nodded, following him to a quieter area of the hall. "Sure, Raphael. What would you like to say?" Raphael seemed nervous, running a hand through his hair. "I just wanted to apologize again for everything. I know we've talked, but I really am sorry." Isabella observed him, perceiving the sincerity in his words. "I know you are, Raphael. And I'm sorry, too, for what could have been." He nodded, looking relieved. "I hope you're doing well. You seem to be." "I'm finding myself," Isabella replied, a small smile forming. "It's been a difficult path, but I'm getting there." Their conversation was interrupted by a colleague calling Raphael back to the party. Isabella stood there for a moment, reflecting on how different that interaction had been from what she expected. There was no more anger, just an acceptance of what couldn't be changed. Back at the party, Isabella joined a group of colleagues playing a trivia game. The laughter was contagious, and she found herself relaxing, allowing herself to enjoy the moment. The night progressed, and Isabella realized she was genuinely having fun. On the way home, Isabella felt a lightness she hadn't felt in months. The dinner had been a test, and she had passed with flying colors. She had not only faced Raphael, but also allowed herself to be happy in his presence. It was a milestone in her healing journey. In the following days, Isabella reflected on what it meant to move forward. She knew there was still work to be done, but she was confident she was on the right path. She began planning a trip to Italy, a place she had always dreamed of visiting. The idea of exploring new landscapes and cultures excited her, and she began making preparations with enthusiasm. Therapy continued to be a pillar in her life, helping her navigate the complexities of her emotions. With each session, Isabella felt stronger and more connected to herself. She learned to value the small moments of joy and not let challenges bring her down. As winter turned to spring, Isabella realized her heart was also blooming. She was open to new possibilities, new relationships, and a future that once seemed uncertain. Raphael and Mariana's betrayal had been a painful chapter, but it didn't define her story. One night, while walking through a nearby park, Isabella ran into Lucas by chance. They talked and laughed, as they did in the old days, and he invited her for coffee. Isabella accepted, feeling that perhaps it was time to open her heart again, even if just a little. The meeting with Lucas was light and fun, a reminder that life still had much to offer. Isabella wasn't ready for a new relationship, but she was open to new friendships and experiences. And that, in itself, was a significant step. As she returned home that night, Isabella felt grateful for her journey. There were scars, yes, but there was also growth and learning. She knew the road ahead was full of possibilities, and she was ready to embrace them with courage and hope. After the company dinner, Isabella felt more secure and confident. The interaction with Raphael had been a turning point, allowing her to finally close that painful chapter of her life. Now, she focused on rebuilding her life with new purpose and enthusiasm. Determined to make the most of her newfound freedom, Isabella began planning her trip to Italy. She spent nights researching destinations, noting places she always wanted to visit. The historic streets of Rome, the stunning landscapes of Tuscany, and the vibrant art of Florence. The idea of exploring these places filled her heart with anticipation and joy. At work, Isabella continued to excel. Her architectural project had received praise, and she was eager to embark on new challenges. With renewed confidence, she began proposing innovative ideas, earning the respect and admiration of her colleagues. Her passion for what she did was evident, and it drove her to always seek more. During a team meeting, her boss pulled her aside. "Isabella, your work has been exceptional. We're thinking of expanding our operations to Europe, and we'd like you to lead the planning team." The proposal caught her by surprise, but also filled her with excitement. The opportunity to work in Europe, combined with her planned trip, seemed a sign she was on the right path. "I'd love to," she replied, with a smile reflecting her determination. As her professional life flourished, Isabella also dedicated herself to strengthening friendships. She spent more time with Lucas and other friends, rediscovering the pleasure of genuine connections. The nights were filled with laughter and deep conversations, reminding her she wasn't alone. Therapy continued to be an essential part of her routine. Isabella had learned the importance of taking care of her mental health, and each session helped her better understand her emotions. The therapist encouraged her to explore her feelings and embrace vulnerability as part of her growth. Over time, Isabella began to realize the pain of betrayal was transforming into something more. She was no longer defined by what she had lost, but by what she was gaining. The experience had made her stronger, more resilient, and more aware of her own value. On a sunny afternoon, while walking through a park, Isabella encountered a group of local artists displaying their works. Inspired, she decided to join an art workshop being offered there. The experience was liberating, allowing her to express her emotions in a new and creative way. Painting became more than a hobby. It was a form of meditation, a way to connect with herself. Each brushstroke was an affirmation of her journey, a reminder she was in control of her own narrative. As the date of her trip approached, Isabella felt more prepared than ever to embrace the unknown. Italy was not just a tourist destination, but a symbol of her new life. She was ready to explore, learn, and grow, knowing each step would lead her to a more authentic version of herself. On the night before her departure, Isabella took a solitary walk through the city, reflecting on the path that had brought her here. There had been pain, yes, but there was also beauty in the journey. Each challenge faced, each tear shed, had contributed to her transformation. Returning to her apartment, Isabella looked out the window, observing the city lights. She felt a deep gratitude for everything she had lived through, and for everything yet to come. She was ready for the next chapter, with an open heart and a mind full of dreams. Isabella knew the future was uncertain, but she also knew she was equipped to face it. With courage, hope, and self-love, she was about to embark on the adventure of a lifetime, ready to discover who she truly was and all she could be. Isabella arrived in Italy with her heart full of anticipation. As she stepped off the plane, she was greeted by a gentle breeze carrying the distinct aroma of a new beginning. The trip was more than an escape. It was a journey of self-discovery, an opportunity to reconnect with parts of herself that had been dormant. In Rome, the city enveloped her with its history and vibrant energy. Isabella walked through ancient streets, marveling at the imposing architecture and rich cultural tapestry. Every corner seemed to tell a story, and she allowed herself to get lost in the beauty of the moment. She visited the Colosseum, the Trevi Fountain, and felt inspired by the grandeur and resilience of the monuments that had withstood time. During a quiet afternoon in a picturesque cafe, Isabella reflected on her life. With a cappuccino in hand, she thought about how much she had transformed since leaving Brazil. Raphael and Mariana's betrayal, which once seemed an unbearable weight, was now just a part of her story, not the whole. She had learned to forgive, to let go, and to embrace the present with gratitude. In Tuscany, Isabella found peace in the rolling hills and vineyards stretching as far as the eye could see. She participated in a cooking class, learning to make fresh pasta and discovering the joy of creating something with her own hands. The experience was therapeutic, a reminder that life is made of small pleasures and moments of simplicity. In Florence, art enveloped her in a way she had never experienced before. Visiting the Uffizi Gallery, Isabella was mesmerized by the works of masters like Botticelli and Michelangelo. The depth and emotion captured in the paintings touched her deeply, inspiring her to explore her own creativity. One night, while walking across the Ponte Vecchio, Isabella came across a group of street musicians. The music was joyful and engaging, and she joined the small crowd that had gathered to watch. She felt part of something bigger, connected to strangers through a moment of pure joy. She danced under the stars, laughing and celebrating the freedom that came with self-acceptance. Throughout the trip, Isabella kept in touch with Lucas, sharing her experiences and discoveries. He became a close friend, someone who supported her without judgment. Their conversations were a constant reminder that, although she was physically distant, she was not alone. Over time, Isabella realized her journey was not just about discovering new places, but also about rediscovering her inner strength. Each day in Italy was an opportunity for growth, a step toward the woman she was destined to become. She learned to trust her intuition, to listen to her heart, and to value her own company. By the end of her trip, Isabella felt renewed. She was ready to return to Brazil, not as the woman who had left, but as someone who had found a new purpose. Italy had taught her the importance of living in the moment, embracing uncertainty, and finding beauty in imperfections. On the flight back, Isabella looked out the window, watching the clouds pass by. She felt a profound sense of peace and fulfillment. The journey had been transformative, and she was eager to apply the lessons learned in her daily life. Upon arriving home, Isabella was greeted by friends and family, who noticed the change in her demeanor. She was more confident, more centered, and ready to face any challenge life might present. With an open heart and a clear mind, Isabella was ready for the next chapter of her life. She knew the road ahead was full of possibilities, and she was determined to embrace them with courage, love, and hope. The journey through Italy had been just the beginning of a new adventure, and she was prepared for whatever the future held. Back in Brazil, Isabella felt like a new person. The trip to Italy had rekindled her passion for life and art, and she was determined to maintain that positive energy in her daily life. Her apartment, which once felt empty, was now a sanctuary of peace and creativity. The walls were adorned with photos and mementos from her trip, each telling a story of discovery and growth. Isabella resumed her work with renewed vigor. Her team noticed the difference. She was more inspired and motivated than ever. Ideas flowed effortlessly, and her enthusiasm was contagious. The European project offered to her before her trip was in full swing, and Isabella led with confidence and vision. Outside of work, Isabella continued to cultivate her friendships. Lucas, in particular, became a pillar in her life. They frequently met for lunches or walks, sharing stories and laughter. Lucas encouraged her to explore new interests and never stop learning. His friendship was a constant source of support and joy. Isabella also reconnected with her family, spending more time with her parents and siblings. Family gatherings were filled with love and laughter, and Isabella felt grateful to have such wonderful people in her life. She realized that despite the challenges she had faced, she had always had a solid support network that helped her rise again. Over time, Isabella began to consider the possibility of a new relationship. Although still cautious, she felt ready to open her heart again. Lucas, ever perceptive, noticed this change and encouraged her to follow her feelings, but without rushing. One day, while walking through a park, Isabella ran into an old college friend, Daniel. They had lost touch over the years, but the conversation flowed easily, as if no time had passed. Daniel was kind and witty, and Isabella found herself drawn to his positive energy. They began meeting regularly, exploring cafes and art exhibitions around the city. Isabella appreciated Daniel's company, his unique perspective on life, and his sense of humor. Over time, a genuine friendship blossomed, bringing a new dimension to Isabella's life. Despite the new connections, Isabella never lost sight of her own needs and desires. She continued to paint, finding joy and expression through colors and shapes. Her art evolved, reflecting her personal journey and the lessons she had learned along the way. Isabella also dedicated time to volunteering, something she had always wanted to do. She became involved with a local organization that supported young artists, helping to nurture talent and creativity in her community. This experience brought her deep satisfaction, knowing she was making a difference in others' lives. As the months passed, Isabella realized she was living the life she had always dreamed of. There were challenges, of course, but she faced them with courage and determination. She had learned to trust herself, to value her choices, and to embrace uncertainty with hope. One night, while walking through the illuminated city, Isabella stopped to gaze at the stars. She felt overwhelming gratitude for everything she had experienced, and for everything that was yet to come. Raphael and Mariana's betrayal, which once consumed her, was now just a distant memory, a lesson learned. Isabella knew the future was full of possibilities, and she was ready to embrace them. With an open heart, she was prepared for whatever destiny had in store. Life was a journey, and she was determined to make the most of it, with love, courage, and an indomitable spirit. Returning to her apartment, Isabella sat at her painting table, inspired by everything she had experienced. With a brush in hand, she began to create a new piece, a representation of her journey and the endless possibilities that still lay ahead. Art, like life, was a work in progress, and Isabella was ready to paint her future with all the colors of the rainbow. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment to support the channel.